Hi, Vinyl community. It's Glen Kellaway coming to you from the basement with my good friend, Sam St. John. Sam, how are you?
Howdy, Glenn. Howdy, folks watching the video. I'm great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's been how long since we did our last The Monkeys
About
video?
two, definitely 2 weeks. Maybe going on three. This might be 3 weeks, 3 Mondays.
Yeah, I got to tell you, that's one of the most fun videos I've done. Maybe the most fun. I love doing that Monkeys one.
Well, I'm honored to have been part of it. It was really fun.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. I'm really proud of that one. Wow. So what are we doing today?
Well, we've kind of been back and forth since the Monkeys about what to do. We have some other ideas down the pike, but this one kind of came to the forefront. It was one that actually I was thinking about doing by myself, and I'm like, no, I'm going to do it with Glenn. So we're going to take the last 10 years, so starting in 2011 up till the present. We've each picked 10 albums just out of our own collections. We don't know what the other one has. And it's not really a ranking, and they're not necessarily our favorite albums of the last 10 years. It's just 10 albums that we wanted to share with you all viewing. Albums that we can't really stop playing even 10 years on, and just discussing them. If we have information, if I have an album that Glenn knows something about or vice versa, we'll just throw in our 2 cents and just share new music with you all, that just showing that there's still good music out there even in the last decade that you might have gone without.
Yeah. For all these people who are busy buying mono Beatles albums, this might be a good video for them to watch.
Yeah, maybe more affordable music.
Awesome. So we're going to kind of go back and forth, like just do one pick each. And just like Sam said, it's random. They're not necessarily ranked or anything. So I think we talked just before going on. I had about 15 albums on my list, and to whittle it down to 10, and kind of my process was to kind of, if I had two albums, I wasn't sure which one I wanted to show, was just which one am I playing more often, which one's getting more love in my house. So even though I appreciate them both, more than the 10
Yeah,
albums, these are the 10 that kind of get a lot of love. So
indeed.
yeah. So you can kick it off, my friend, if you want to show your first album. We don't know what each other's picked, so this will be interesting.
And it's very likely we've not heard of a bunch of these albums ourselves, so we're
Maybe.
probably sharing new information with each other.
I got a pen ready.
I do too, and I'm probably this will be my my work listening playlist for the rest of the week. Glenn's albums that I know nothing about. All right. Yeah, again, thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this video with you. Again, to keep these videos rolling with you. Somebody I haven't talked about, and those of you that are on my channel, this is somebody I've never talked about, but I love this artist. Like I saw him on his farewell tour back in 2018, I believe. The artist is Paul Simon, and I love his the introduction that many people get to Paul Simon. Solo is Graceland. I mean, that's where his hits were, with Diamonds on the Soles of Her Shoes, You Can Call Me Al. That's one of those albums I know back to front, up and down, every which way. I love it. I love Graceland. And that was the only album that I had of his. Well, I learned in 2011, and I'm starting with my oldest albums first and moving my way up the decade. There's an album called So Beautiful or So What is the name of the album, by Paul Simon. And it's 2011, as I mentioned. To me, this is a modern day Graceland album. Not necessarily as world music as Graceland, because Graceland, of course, used African musicians throughout the whole. And he went down to South Africa and took recordings of these musicians and essentially made those the basic tracks for what became Graceland. And this album, it's produced by Phil Ramone, who Phil Ramone is everywhere on classic rock albums. I mean, he was all over the place. And it's also produced by Paul Simon. but it has guest musicians on here, such as Paul Simon's wife, Edie Brickell, and as well as Doyle Lawson, the bluegrass singer from Doyle Lawson and Quicksilver, who I was fortunate enough to have met a few years ago and shake his hand. That was pretty cool.
That is cool.
There are songs on here, so like it's obviously from the point of view of an older Paul Simon. I mean, and even now, I mean, he's 10 years older than he was when he made this album. But he does a song specifically called Rewrite, where he talks about rewriting his whole life. And I don't know, are you familiar with this album?
I love that album. I'm so happy you picked it.
Yeah, and I remember when this came out my junior year of high school, talking to one of my teachers that got me introduced to Bob Dylan, telling him about this album. And it's Paul Simon almost in a spiritual sense. Like it's him thinking about mortality, as a lot of the older artists do. But the song Rewrite specifically, he talks about essentially rewriting his life. He's like, I'm working on my rewrite. I'm going to change the ending, throw away the title, toss it in the trash. It's a great song. Before that, there's a song called Dazzling Blue.
Beautiful song. Yeah.
We'll build a wall where nothing can break through and dream our dreams of dazzling blue. I mean, it's a very poetic album. He does a song called Questions for the Angels, where he's talking like he's dying, or he has passed away, and what he'll talk to the angels about when he gets into heaven. He does a beautiful instrumental called Amulet. It just shows his finger picking skills on a classical guitar. And Paul Simon, for years, it's Paul Simon the singer, Paul Simon the songwriter, but he's a heck of a good guitar player. I mean,
yeah, he is. Great musician.
The music theory that he that he has running through his veins is unbelievable about how he knows his way up and down the neck of a guitar. But when this album came out, it was on constant repeat in my car, at home, while we were having meals, my family and I. My mom is a big Paul Simon fan. She's the one I went to the concert with in 2018 for his Homeward Bound tour. And he did a couple of these songs. He did Dazzling Blue. He also did Questions for the Angels. But I mean, it's if you like, because like a lot of artists, he had some flubs between what many consider his masterpiece, Graceland, up until now. I think the album Surprise from the early 2000s didn't do very well for him. The album just before Graceland, Hearts and Bones, was ill received by critics. But this album, a lot of people said it's his best since Graceland. And Graceland was the late 80s, and this is 2011. So a 30-year window of music that Paul Simon did, and they're calling this the best. And I don't usually go by critics' opinion anyway, but I do agree that this is his best album since Graceland. And he's had a couple albums since this, but this is the one that's had the staying power with me, and the one that I'll pop back into the CD player and listen to. But if you haven't listened to it, if you don't know anything about Paul Simon, I mean, check it out. So Beautiful or So What. It's a great modern day era Paul Simon album, and I love it to death. And I'll go a year or so without listening to it and pop it in and think, that's a really solid album from top to bottom. So that's my first one, So Beautiful or So What, from 2011 by Paul Simon.
That is a fantastic pick. So glad you did that. I actually thought about that too. I was thinking about Paul Simon, and his last album, I think, is Stranger. There
was In the Blue Light was his last.
In the Blue, yeah, and then the one just previous to that. So there's been two albums since
Stranger to
So
Stranger.
Beautiful, So What. Stranger to Stranger and In the Blue Light. They're both really good too. Not as good as So Beautiful, So What, though. That's really is a great, amazing at his age. Like you think of the classic guys, he is still can write a song. He is a songsmith, man.
He is.
Yeah.
He knows his way around a melody.
Yeah. And that's awesome. Yeah. Great pick. Okay, I'm going to 2011. Did you say that album came out in 2011?
I did. Yeah.
Wow. I can't believe how that's that old. I'm going with Tom Waits that came out in 2011. This is Tom Waits' last album. That Is Me. I really love this album. It's gruff and raw, which I guess Tom is normally anyway. I wish I didn't at the time who knew that that was going to be Tom's last record. I think he's kind of rode off into the sunset a little bit, but there's the I'll show the vinyl and the label.
That's a neat label.
Yeah, it is very cool, and comes with a great book, the record, with a great picture of Tom on the cover, and then all more pictures and lyrics. But there's some great stuff on here. There's a couple of catchy songs. There's one called "Hell Breaks Loose," which is it's not spelled Loose, it's Luce, like it's someone's name, and he does it like a Marine march. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he sings along with the march, and the lyrics are crazy. Like my name is Jeff. I was a chef, and now I'm deaf because because of the bomb that blew in my ear, and it's like an anti-war song. It's a great song, and there's a real ballad on here called "Last Leaf on the Tree," which is great.
Yeah, with Keith Richards.
Yeah, with Keith Richards, which is my favorite song on the album. It's just amazing. Yeah, the last leaf on the tree. The autumn took the rest, but they won't take me. I'm the last leaf on the tree. When the autumn wind blows, they're already gone. They flutter to the ground because they can't hang on. There's nothing in the world that I can't see. I greet all the new ones that are coming in green. I'm the last leaf on the tree. It's a great record. Tom Waits. That's my first pick.
Was that his was that the Glitter and Doom tour?
After Glitter and Doom, I think.
Mm-hmm. Did you see him?
I saw Tom Waits early on in his career in like 1978 when Nighthawks at the Diner came out, that live album.
Yeah.
That was right around that time. It was basically that kind of set up. It was great. A little theater, and it was just him with his piano and bass player and a sax and drums. That was it. It was real bare bones.
Wow.
Amazing show.
I would love that.
Yeah. I wished I had seen him since. He doesn't tour that much or anything, and I'm hoping he's still got another album in him somewhere.
I think he does. You're giving me false hope saying that that's his last album. I think he's got one more in him.
Let's hope so.
He's hiding it somewhere. He's been working on something, I think.
Cool. What do you got up next?
All right. So I know I just showed again, and for those of you that don't, my first 3 albums are going to be 2011. So I didn't intend for that to be the case, but these are the albums that I've been spinning for like the last year, and I can't get them out of my head. So that's part of the reason. I don't know if it'll be the case in 2 years. I don't know if I'll still be spinning them as much, but for now they're on this list because I make that final decision. I just showed this album a couple months ago in one of my recent purchase videos. This is a band I just got into during this year. This is their debut album. It's The Head and the Heart.
Oh, I don't know them.
It's self-titled. They're a band out of Seattle, an indie folk band. Very mellow type style songs. They came around. They became popular around the time that like Mumford and Sons and the Lumineers, all those bands, when they all came to the forefront, they just kind of tagged along with that new folk revival that came out in the mid 2000s, the 2010s. This is probably, from what I understand, they recorded this album before they even had a contract. They got signed to Sub Pop Records, which is a big indie label. And from what I understand, they recorded this album almost exactly as it is now. And they would hand it out before their shows. I think like the original copies of these were like in like a denim vest kind of cover, almost like a bootleg. And when they were signed to Sub Pop, they kind of did a couple of overdubs. I think they did a re-recording on 2 of the tracks. I might be wrong. But if you like, it's hard to compare them to anybody else. I mean, I know that they like the Eagles. I know the Eagles are a big influence on the lead singer. What's his name? Jonathan Russell. And he's self-admitted that he likes to stay in the mid-tempo song range. So he's okay with not changing up melody or that sort of thing. But just it's a very you have to like, indie acoustic pop ballads, that sort of thing. But the 2 big songs on this that are used in like romantic comedies, they're used on television shows. One of them was called Down in the Valley, which was used in a commercial back here in the States, probably around that time, probably 2011 or 12. And the other one was Rivers and Roads, which is like their big ballad. Just it's like a drinking song, like arms around the friends. Just Rivers and Roads till I meet you. It's used. It's in a lot of finales of TV shows or like final seasons where things are wrapping up. It's just one of those songs that is used in that capacity. But there were some other good songs. I mean, it's a very mid-tempo album. It's not one that you put on to stay awake in the car, but I love it to death. I became hooked on the band and bought all 4 of their records. And
we've got a thunderstorm coming here, so if something happens, this may get dicey, man. I can hear it. It's crazy outside. I'm down in the basement and I can hear the thunder crashing.
Oh gosh,
the lights just flickered. So
I noticed that.
Sorry to interrupt you.
I'm sorry. I'm finished up anyway, but yeah, check it out. The Head and the Heart.
I definitely wrote that down. I'm going over to YouTube to check them out. Yeah, very cool. Thanks for that. I love hearing about stuff I don't know about. My next pick is from 2012. Canadian singer-songwriter Kathleen Edwards, Voyager. This is my favorite Kathleen Edwards album. She has about I'm going to say her catalog consists of about 5 or 6 records. She's just got a new one album out this year. So Kathleen kind of broke out in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and she was kind of like the person to watch on the scene. That Rolling Stone magazine said, "Hey, watch out for this artist," and she was getting a lot of press in the U.S. on her first couple albums. She was on the David Letterman show. She did tours with a lot of people, Steve Earle, all kinds of people. And she was pretty successful up until this album, which came out in 2012. She started to suffer some mental issues. And rather than continue the career, she walked right away from the music business after this album came out. And this album was produced. She was hanging out with, she'd recently been divorced when she started recording this. So a lot of the songs are kind of, in that vein, very personal. And she started dating and hanging out with Justin Vernon from Bon. Is it Bon Iver or Bon Iver? I never know how to pronounce it.
Bon Iver. Yeah.
Bon Iver. Yeah. So her and Justin were a couple for a while, and he helped her with this album. And you can hear, Bon Iver's records have that certain sound to them.
Yeah.
And you can kind of hear that a little bit in these songs. Not too much, but you can tell he was involved. Anyway, great album. She's great singer-songwriter from Ottawa, Ontario. After this album came out, she toured it. She had a bit of a breakdown and suffered from depression. She walked away from the music business completely, and she opened a coffee shop in the suburbs of Ottawa, and it's called Quitter's Cafe. And it's actually pretty successful coffee shop. She built a pretty good business, and then the last year or so, she decided she wanted to get back into the music business again, and she's come up with a new album called Total Freedom, which is really good. It's getting rave reviews. She's on tour right now. Like, she was doing a package show with Willie Nelson and a whole bunch of people. She's really getting back into it. So but Voyager is my favorite Kathleen Edwards album, and my wife loves this album too. She's a great live performer. If you ever get a chance to see her, this is a wonderful record. Voyager.
Neat pick. I know nothing. I think you've mentioned her in another video, but that's all I know about her.
Check it out. She's great.
That was 2012.
That was 2012.
Very cool. All right. You were finished with Kathleen, correct?
I was finished.
I didn't want to cut you off. Okay.
No, I'm good.
All right. My last 10-year-old album, and again, I apologize. I didn't mean for this to be the case, but I wasn't changing these 3 albums that I've just shown. Excuse me. This is the final album by a group called Fountains of Wayne, and it's called Sky Full of Holes. And if you don't know anything about Fountains of Wayne, I mean, they were a late 90s, early 2000s band. They formed in New York City. Chris Collingwood and Adam Schlesinger, who we lost to COVID last year, unfortunately. He was one of the early celebrity that I've heard of. He was only 52 when he passed away.
Oh, that sucks.
But if you like, their big hit on the radio was called Stacy's Mom, and it was a novelty song, and it was big in like a lot of like the Disney Channel era kind of music. But I know Chris Collingwood, the lead singer, and he was a co-writer with Adam, who was like the main melody guy. And if you know anything, I've done a tribute video to Fountains of Wayne. And
where did the name come from? Isn't there something to do? Doesn't that name come from somewhere?
Yeah, out of Wayne, Indiana. They were driving and saw there was a like a yard store, like they sold like gnomes and things like that and fountains, and so like the store was called Fountains of Wayne. It's like Fountains of Wayne, Indiana, and it kind of fits their music because like a lot of their stuff has humor in it, and this album is no exception. Again, Sky Full of Holes. I think so I knew Stacy's Mom because it was a novelty song. It was like, they were a one-hit wonder band, which is such a unfortunate shame. But they were going through some personal strife when this album came out. I know Chris and Adam were kind of butting heads as songwriters do with one another when there's two creative forces behind a band. But if you like power pop, if you like kind of some jangle pop, some acoustics ballads, there's some really, really, really good stuff on this album. The song "A Dip in the Ocean," which is song number 6 on the album, it's straight from like the 60s. I mean, it's just a summertime tune. And Adam, he in the band, he plays bass when they perform live, but he wrote the title track to the movie That Thing You Do with Tom Hanks.
Oh, okay. All right.
About the one-hit wonder band, the Wonders. He wrote that song and performed on the track that they used to lip sync over on the movie. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if their whole catalog is fantastic. If they had made albums more recently, I may have picked another one. But I do think this is my favorite out of them, even though it is their last. It's so good. I mean, it's a wide variety of music. There's some country on there. There's some power pop. There's jangle pop. There's acoustic ballad. I mean, it's got everything that you want. If you like old music from the 60s into the 70s, check that out. I mean, it's just so good. I can't recommend it enough. I fell in love with it. I've spun it, I don't know how many dozens of times in the past year. Just check it out. That's the best advice I can give you about it. It's just a really, really good album.
Wow, I got to check that out myself. That sounds good. I think I heard Shannon talk about Fountains of Wayne on her channel. Yeah,
fans of, yes, she did.
I think she's a fan.
Yeah, I mean, again, check them out. Check out their Tiny Desk concert through NPR. It's on YouTube. It was when this album came out. I can't say enough good things about it. I wish I could have seen them live. I fell in love with them too late, and of course, Adam is now no longer with us. So. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Interesting picks. Very cool. Okay, my next pick. This is hard to see. So the woman's name is Lydia Lovelace. This album's called Somewhere Else. It came out in 2014. This was her second album. She had to put out an EP, and then she had an album called, I think, Destructible Machine or Indestructible Machine. Then this album, she's got another CD called Real, and then she just put out a new album, which I'm just going to show just because you get a chance to see her. This album's called Daughter. It's, so Lydia's alt country punk, I would say, is the way she started out. It was real jangly guitars, a lot of like Rickenbacker guitars, and has that sound, and really real quirky lyrics. She's like, I went to a party, someone gave me some blow, and I started crying, and like it's just talking about, I don't know. It's just her music is really kind of contemporary, I guess, but a lot of energy. She does do some great ballads, but this is my favorite CD of hers, called Somewhere Else. To me, her voice is kind of a blend if you mixed Emmylou Harris and Stevie Nicks together. If they had a baby, it would be Lydia Lovelace. And really, there's some great ballads on here too. She does a song called I know you're a big Steve Earle fan. She does a song called Steve Earle. You should.
I've heard of that song.
Yeah. So it's all about Steve Earle won't stop calling her. He found out that she liked it. It starts off with he wants to meet me because he heard I do cocaine, and then and then it's the whole thing about Steve trying to date her, and she's going, Steve, like, and she's getting sick of him coming around, and it's really funny song. Actually, I'm sure Steve got a big kick out of it. Actually,
wow,
it's really cool. But anyway, she's one of my favorite artists, and the new album Daughter is amazing too. Like I almost put it on the list. It's really good. She's born and raised in Ohio, and recently got divorced. Her bass player was her husband, and he was a really good musician. And they did all the albums together, except for the new one. They got divorced, and she packed up and moved to the Carolinas. She's somewhere in the Carolinas living, and she wrote this really introspective album, Daughter, which is really a lot about breakups and starting a new life and things like that. It's very introspective and singer-songwriter-ish. Great record, Daughter. I highly recommend it. But I'm going with this one because I've been listening to this for quite a few years now. And Lydia Lovelace, Somewhere Else.
Very cool. And you slightly broke up, so I'm hoping that you can stay here.
Okay, I'm still here.
You're clear as a bell right now, so we'll keep on rolling.
Okay.
All right. So I'm moving up 1 year to 2012. So goodbye to 2011. So this is my senior year of high school, this album, and it's by John Mayer, Born and Raised, 2012. Now, another misunderstood artist is Mr. John Mayer. So just before this album came out, he went through a big scandal where he said some derogatory remarks about some former girlfriends that he had, and it was huge. It was all over the news, and of course, John Mayer was on top of the world by that point. I mean, he had his big, what's considered to be his masterpiece, Continuum, had come out a few years prior. That was huge radio play. I mean, he was all over like your adult contemporary radio. I mean, he was, guys that were playing guitar, they wanted to learn how to play Daughters by John Mayer, Waiting on the World to Change, just the stuff that you still hear on the radio all the time. And he got too big for his head, and he dated too many high profile women, and just became drowned in celebrity. And his ego got the best of him, and it finally came back to bite him in the butt. And so he went through all sorts of apologies and things, and then he decided to move out to Montana and get away from public life. He wanted to get out of Los Angeles and move to a ranch that he bought in the middle of the Wild West and kind of start fresh. And the result was this album called Born and Raised. And I know during the time when it came out, and he released like a playlist of stuff that he was listening to during this time. I know he was listening to a lot of Blue by Joni Mitchell. He was listening to After the Gold Rush by Neil Young. He was listening to some, I know one of the songs was Queen Jane Approximately by Bob Dylan was on his playlist. So he was listening to like the Laurel Canyon and early 70s songwriters stuff. And as a result, it birthed Born and Raised. And this is, again, John Mayer is on top of the world with the radio, and then all of a sudden he releases this, which sounds like it could have been, a Bob Dylan, Neil Young album from the early 1970s. And he's actually got on one of the songs, he has actually the title track, Born and Raised, he has David Crosby and Graham Nash doing background vocals on it. Another song called Face to Call Home, he has Sarah Watkins from Nickel Creek
doing one of my favorites,
background vocals and violin.
Wow, I love Sarah.
And he's got Greg Lees, I think that's how you pronounce his name, Leisc.
Greg Lees, yeah, great musician.
He's playing all sorts of things. He's played with everybody from Jackson Browne to Joni to Tracy Chapman to Emmylou
Cinda
Harris.
Williams.
I think he's with Jackson Browne now. He's on the latest album.
Oh.
And I mean, this whole album, and the opening single, Queen of California, he's talking about, I think, kind of a fall from fame, like going away from California, kind of a Hotel California kind of deal. But it's just, it could have, it belongs in the 1970s, and none of these songs, made the radio. I mean, they were, and so people were like, oh, John Mayer, he's the guy that wrote, all those songs about, having crushes, and is middle school music for people. But this is if you like any of that kind of stuff, if you like Neil Young, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Joni Mitchell, Bob Dylan, you got to check out Born and Raised. And then the follow-up to it, I didn't want to pick two John Mayer albums, but the follow-up called Paradise Valley is just as good. It's the same kind of style.
That's interesting.
It's just, it's fantastic. The whole thing is good. I know you would love it, and anybody that likes that music would.
You piqued my interest. See, I when you're talking about John Mayer he first got successful, and that what was it called? Continuum, that album.
Continuum was his first.
I wasn't a big fan. I really respected him as a musician. He's a really fine guitar player for sure.
Yeah.
And but I felt he was too full of himself, and like you said, he started dating all these he's then dating Jennifer Aniston or something. I don't know, people like that, right? That echelon of people. He was going for the A-list celebrity women.
Yeah.
And he just turned me off as a human being, and that album I didn't like that much.
Yeah.
I thought it was middle of the road kind of. I don't know. I didn't like it. So I pay attention to this stuff at all. So I'm interested. But what got me interested in John Mayer was he joined up forces with the surviving members of the Grateful Dead and did the tour, Dead and Company tour, before Trey Anastasia came on board, right? He did a bunch of shows with them.
It was Trey came on during the Fare Thee Well 50th
Oh, that's
anniversary.
right. And then John joined after.
So what happened was John Mayer was a guest host on a television show in the States on CBS, and he invited, and it was one of those, it was like the late show. Like it was.
I watched it. Yeah. I saw that.
And he invited Bob Weir on, and that kind of sparked the interest. And that's the time, I think the second album of these duos of albums came out. So he was in that vein, and Bob Weir took notice, and John Mayer invited him on. They jammed. I think the Brown Eyed Women, and maybe Althea too. I think they did two songs.
They did Althea for sure. Yeah, I
But
remember that show.
yeah, I'm telling you, man, born and raised. And if you like that, check out the next one, Paradise Valley. I mean,
Okay,
it's
I will.
very, very good. It's very good.
I'm sold. You sold me. You sold me.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, my next one is a concept album from 2015. I'm jumping up to 2015. Steven Wilson. You're familiar with Steven Wilson? Um, he's a prog musician out of England who does all the remixes and everything for the Yes catalog and the Jethro
Oh,
Tull
okay.
catalog and all that. But he also has his own solo career. And he was in a band called Porcupine Tree, which are kind
I've
of
heard of them.
famous. And Blackfield was another project of his. He started doing his own solo albums. There's one's called the Raven That Refused to Sing, which is a great album. They're pretty. If you like Rush meets Pink Floyd, is the way I
Mm,
would describe it. It gets really heavy,
yeah.
like Rushish at times, and then it goes into these kind of more melodic leads and stuff like that, and acoustic stuff. Reminds me a bit of Pink Floyd. He's a
Cool.
big scholar of prog music. Anyway, he did this album in 2000 and what did I say? 15 called Hand Cannot Erase. It's a concept album and one of my favorite albums of all time, not just of the last 10 years. Um, the story, I looked it up on my iPad so I could get the name right. The story, it's a concept album based on, it's written in a female perspective of a woman whose name was Joyce Carol Vincent. She lived in a big city in England and she started to withdraw. She was having some mental issues and withdrew from the world, basically from all her friends and all her family. She would write emails and make people think she was okay and everything, but she wasn't. And I guess slowly she stopped communicating, but just enough so people thought she was still around. And she passed away. And they didn't find her body for 3 years. It's a
Wow.
famous story in England. Anyway, he wrote the story, the whole story of her life in this album, starting off, as a child, and then through her life and through the ending, and the letters that she would write to
Very
her
interesting.
brother and whatever, and saying she's okay, and hey brother. That's a beautiful album. Some of it, like, it starts off really acoustically, and then all of a sudden it gets, it's just like it almost scares you. It gets so dramatic and loud. It's one of the most dramatic albums I've ever heard in my life, but a beautiful, beautiful album. Hand Cannot Erase. You got to check it out. It's
Will
incredible.
do.
Yeah.
Will do.
So yeah, I saw the tour when he did it. He did the album in its entirety, and he plays with a guitar player. There's two actually. There's an Israeli singer he sings with. She's on the album. Her name is Nanette uh, Tayeb. She's from Israel. Just an amazing voice this woman has. And the guitar player, Guthrie Govan. Have you ever heard this guy?
Say his name again.
Guthrie
Uh-uh.
Govan. Guthrie Govan. I'm pretty sure. See if I can find the list of musicians. I want to make sure I got his name right because he's an amazing guitarist. Yeah, Guthrie Govan. Like Guthrie, like Woody Guthrie. It's his first name, Govan, Govan. Amazing guitar player.
Hmm.
And Nanette Tayeb. Yeah, they're kind of the two stars of the album, really. And great live performance. Yeah, amazing. Steven Wilson. He's a really talented guy. Hand Cannot Erase.
I will definitely spin it, sample it out.
Yeah, do that. There's the album.
Very cool. Definitely. Yours are. I can already see yours is, as I was expecting, is much more eclectic than mine. Mine is staying along the same kind of, like, the people that like. I guess I could say people that like one of my albums might like the rest. Yours are very, like, you might one group here, one group here. It's very cool. I'm very impressed. All right, and to stay with the same kind of thing that I've
Oh, my phone's ringing. My wife will get that. Ignore it. I got thunderstorms. I got phone calls. It's crazy. Go
You're a
ahead.
busy man. All of your clients.
Yeah.
I know that you have talked about this album, oh, not this album, but this group on one of the comments, because I've done a tribute to this group as well. The group is the Wood Brothers.
Yeah.
This is their album from 2013 called The Muse. Probably their best, though they're most well known, if they can be well known. I mean, they're not a radio band. It's a trio out of Georgia: Chris Wood, Oliver Wood, and John O. Ricks. They've been together probably as a trio really since this album, I believe. But Chris and Oliver have been playing together since the early 2000s, probably 2005 or 6. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I first heard of the Wood Brothers. They were on a late night show. I can't remember which one. It might have been Conan O'Brien. It might have been Letterman. I don't remember. But they did the title song, "The Muse," which is a beautiful song, about their muse and their art. And they're a really neat band. I mean, if you like Levon Helm, if you like the band, if you like, they've toured a lot with Tedeschi Trucks. Susan Tedeschi has sung background on a couple other albums, including Oliver's most recent solo album. I think she does some background vocals on that. But this album was produced by Zach Brown of the Zach Brown Band. They opened for him, and they signed to his label Southern Ground. And it's very acoustic. It's got some gritty bluesy type songs. Great slide guitar. Oliver Wood's a great slide guitar player. Beautiful ballads. And again, for a trio, you're like, man, they're making a lot of noise. Just the three of them. And Oliver's got this piercing voice it's just a great sound. All of their stuff is great. I love it all. I've seen them twice in concert, and both times, every time I see them, I'm like, that's top 5 best performance live that I've ever seen.
Wow.
They're so, I love them to death. And everything that they touch, I want to grab hold of it. But I don't have much to say about it. It's a great album. If you're going to get involved in the Wood Brothers, start with the Muse and then work your way out from there. Their latest album, One Drop of Truth. Oh, excuse me. Their Kingdom on My Mind was their last album. Most recent. It's fantastic. I mean, they're just, if you like the band, especially, like, they're in that same vein. So check them out. The Muse is my.
I might be way out off base here. Was Chris Wood part of Martin Medeski and Wood?
He was.
Okay, so I'm not.
He trained as a jazz bassist, and his brother Oliver did his own thing with his bands. And then, like, years went by, and they're like, why didn't we ever play together? So they joined forces. I think Oliver came and sat in with Medeski, Martin, and Wood, and they kind of hit it off like, we're brothers. Why aren't we playing together? And actually, on Oliver's solo album, I think Medeski and Martin play on it at different times. Yeah, so they're all in the same, like, they're all friends. They're all part of the same groups.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, but very good.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Another great pick. This is great because I'm learning lots too. We're helping each other out here. I think this is pretty good. I'm going to need your help on this one because I know you know more about this album than I know about, but I freaking love it.
I might have already picked it. I might have picked it.
It came out of left field, as far as I'm concerned. I wasn't expecting it to be good, and I bought it used because when it came out, I didn't even buy it new because I didn't think this is going to be crap. This is not.
Oh yeah.
The Monkees' Good Times, 2016. This is a fantastic record.
It is.
And I was just so surprised. I picked it up only because it was used. I thought I can get it for $10. I'll take it and give it a shot because I like the Monkees. But wow, Me and Magdalena, Wasn't Born to Follow. I don't even know what to say. Oh man, just it's fantastic. Me and Magdalena is one of my favorite Monkey songs of all time now.
It is my favorite. If you watched our last video,
you picked it as your first one, and I know it was in my top 10. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I would love you to talk a little bit about, like, because I'm not sure all four monkeys are on this, but there was posthumous some of the recordings, right? Like,
Correct. Yeah. And okay, so I'm gonna kind of switch it up a little bit here to merge with you because I'm going in order of the albums that I've done.
yeah.
And next on my list was this.
Oh wow. So okay, we'll talk about it together, and then you can
But
pick another one.
I might have mentioned it beforehand. I don't want to take your time away, but
No, please. I was hoping you're gonna. I'm hoping you're gonna help me here.
I had chosen another, so I chose this originally for my list, and then I thought, I think Glenn is going to pick it, so I'm going to try to remove it. But when I came downstairs, I picked another album. I realized I forgot to switch it out of my pile that I had made last night, and so I might go ahead and talk about the other album. I just don't have it with me.
You can do that. Yeah, you can do that.
But we did match.
It's our video. We can do whatever we want. Yeah.
Exactly. Take that, critics.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so it's of course it's almost, I think it was exactly 20 years since their last album, which was Just Us, which they did as a reunion. The four of them, they were all still living in '96, and it didn't get great reviews. I mean, people were kind of underwhelmed by it. It didn't sound like a Monkees album necessarily. Kind of like Pull It, which was the album prior to that, in the late '80s. But yeah, a lot of it. I mean, of course, you have a Davy Jones song "Love to Love" on here, which was, I think, from '66, I think, is the recording for that. And a lot of the songs that they did, they took they might have taken like the old instrumentals and then added the new vocals. Like I mean, like the title track "Good Times," it's the Harry Nilsson demo with Mickey singing harmony over the Harry Nilsson demo. Yeah. Of course, they were good friends, drinking buddies, and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, it came out of nowhere. I mean, it's on Rhino Records, produced by Adam Schlesinger of Fountains of Wayne, who I mentioned earlier. And his harmony is all over this album. He does keyboards, he does bass on it. He wrote one of the songs for sure. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. But yeah, I mean, Our Own World, which is the fourth song. That's kind of a Fountains of Wayne sounding song, and he's all over the album. I mean, indie artists are all over it. You got Ben Gibbard, who wrote Me and Magdalena from Death Cab for Cutie. Noel Gallagher from Oasis and High Flying Birds. He did Birth of an Accidental Hipster. Andy Partridge of XTC, Rivers Cuomo of Weezer. I mean, they got new artists that aren't necessarily the big hit makers and put them on this album, because that's how the Monkees started, was writers like from the Brill Building, essentially, like Carole King and Neil Diamond wrote songs and just sent it out, and artists took them, and you know, the record companies essentially said, you're going to sing this Carole King song, you're going to sing this Neil Diamond song. But yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to believe that this album's already 5 years old, and I love it. I mean, you can mention your specific thoughts because it's your pick essentially right now, but yeah, that's kind of what I got in a nutshell. If you want to, I mean, we loved all over this album on our Monkees countdown, so you can go back and watch it.
Well, I would just like to say to people, if you see the word the Monkees on there and you're one of these people who says, they were just a bunch of actors, there wasn't a real band, and you're kind of down on them, like, if you like folk, I would say folk rock. Would you consider it like a folk rock kind of type album?
Yeah, I
guess if I had to describe it as something, if you just like that kind of music, like, just check it out and
Jangle Pop.
It's the Monkees. It's incredible. It really is a great record. I don't know what else to say. Really, really impressed by it and surprised, because I didn't want to be impressed by it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, that was it was a surprise, and that's what got me into the Monkees 5 years ago. And I still spin it, and love I don't skip a song on it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Really great album. Yeah. So yeah, okay. Well, now I stole your thunder, so
you stole the thunder, but I'm glad you did, because it kind of gives me a chance to talk about the other album, which I threw under the bus solely because I didn't want to go back upstairs and get it. So
you can do that.
So I guess this is my this is my sixth album pick. It's gonna be Magpie and the Dandelion by the Avett Brothers. Brothers.
Oh man, love the Avett.
And so the Avett Brothers, of course, they're out of North Carolina, and Magpie and the Dandelion. It followed. So by this point, they had joined up with Rick Rubin and his American label. They did that 2 albums back on the I Am Loving You album, which is their most commercially successful, I would say, album. But
I would say
they're always topping the charts of like folk rock and rock charts whenever they release an album. They're always in there when it's released. And Magpie and the Dandelion came 2 albums after I Am Loving You. So it's got Rick Rubin on it. One of the session players that Rick Rubin always pulls from is Benmont Tench from the Heartbreakers, the keyboard player. He's played on several Avett albums. He's on this album. I could have picked several Avett albums that have come out since 2011. This one's 2013, but I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's got one of my favorite Avett Brothers songs on it called Morning Song, which is the second song. Just a beautiful song. When I saw the Avett Brothers in 2019, that's what they opened with. And like, I was hooked. Just fantastic melodies. The Avett Brothers are great songwriters. They're not given enough credit as songwriters. They're in like the outlaw rock, ballad, acoustic kind of stuff. I mean, they're all over the spectrum. They started out early on, like doing like screamo, like and some grunge, like when they were in high school.
Yeah.
So they have that energy into their performances, but they're playing, acoustic guitars and banjos. And it's probably the most played Avett Brothers album in my collection of the last year and a half, 2 years, I would say. So that's why I picked it. And if you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's a yellow cover with a magpie, like blackbird on it.
I have that CD. I love those guys too. They're really good musicians too. They're really tasteful.
Yeah.
Musicians.
Yeah. Oh, and even like, because like even like their early stuff is so raw, they've really become their own group and show like that they don't have to scream or do, they can do melodic music and still pack a punch. And that's what Magpie and the Dandelion is. I love it top to bottom.
Oh, that's a great pick. Yeah, I love the Avetts. Awesome pick. What's my next one here? I'm still in 2016. Same as Good Times. One of my favorites, Lucinda Williams. Now, obviously, Lucinda's classic album is Car Wheels on a Dusty Road. But this is my, or on a gravel road, I'm sorry. But this is my favorite Lucinda album, Ghosts of Highway 20. It's much more folky than her previous albums. She does a great cover of Factory, the Bruce Springsteen song. And a lot of this album was recorded when her dad died, and a lot of it is about death and passing. Actually, I lost my cousin to cancer, who was really close to me when he was in the last year of his life. This album came out, and I bought it for him. And he phoned me after he listened to it, and he was really emotional about it because the songs really hit home if you're staring down death's door. But great record, Lucinda. She just another one who keeps getting better with age. I almost picked her latest album, Good Souls, Better Angels, in my top 10 too, but I decided to go with this one because it's my favorite Lucinda Williams album.
She just did a Tom Petty tribute too, didn't she?
Yeah, that's out now. Yeah, I've heard a couple songs from it. It sounds pretty good. It's not. I haven't bought it yet, but
she's one I can't fully get behind. I've tried a couple different times to delve in, and something I can't make myself get that plunge.
Her voice is very it's an acquired taste. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
That's the right way to say it, right?
Which I mean, I'm a guy who loves Bob Dylan and Tom Waits, so I'm not one to judge voices.
Yeah, but you should try this album. It's pretty good. Especially check out the song "Ghosts of Highway 20," the title song. Pretty neat.
I've got it written.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah, that's my next one. You're up.
All right. Now, I don't know if we've ever talked about this album, the two of us, but again, I hope you know it. If you don't know it, I mean, check it out, as I'm going to check out the albums that you're talking about as well. And actually, I just listened to this album before I logged in with you. I love this album to death. It's Marty Stuart and the Fabulous Superlatives, way out west, from 2017. Produced, and I don't know if you can see in the bold print there, produced by Mike Campbell of the Heartbreakers and the Dirty Knobs.
Okay, this one really got me intrigued.
So Mike Campbell is all over this album. I mean, all over it.
One of my favorite guitar players.
He plays on some songs. I think he plays a little bit of like drone organ in the background. Like you can't even hear it. It's almost like in use of like in place of a bass. And he does a couple of rhythm guitar, but he lets Marty and Kenny Vaughn, the lead guitarist of the Superlatives, take the helm of the playing. But if you like the Byrds, if you like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, if you like some Buck Owens, like Bakersfield, this was essentially done as a tribute to the Wild West. Wow. And so they go from Laurel Canyon, they go to Wyoming. I mean, they're all over the spectrum. They go like old country. They do some surf rock instrumental numbers, like the Torpedoes and like the Ventures. They have a couple of great songs. The song Mojave, which is like the first full song on the album. So if you're familiar with Marty's latter day albums, he does a lot of like interlude kind of things. So like he's like the first track is called Desert Prayer, and it sounds like it's like a Native American chant that was like recorded on site of like a Native American ceremony. And then it goes into Mojave, which is like the surf rock, just like psychedelic. It's very good. And actually, when I saw Marty Stuart open for Steve Miller Band a couple of years ago, and they opened with Mojave, and it shows how instrumental these guys are musically. I mean, they're just fantastic. But a big song on this, like the song that really like got me into this, was the song called "Time Don't Wait," which I also saw Marty Stuart back up Roger McGuinn and Chris Hillman when they did their Sweetheart of the Rodeo tribute show. And so during the show, they opened the show with Bird's greatest hits, and then there was a break, and then Marty Stuart and the Superlatives came out. They did a couple of songs that they were inspired by the Byrds and like that era to do, and then they did Sweetheart of the Rodeo after, like this is the second half of the show. And one of the songs they did was Time Don't Wait, which is very 8 Miles High esque, because they like when they played it, they kind of did the intro to 8 Miles High before they broke into Time Don't Wait, which is very, very jangle pop, very Bird. It's Byrds all day long. It's got that Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers feel to it with Mike at the helm. I mean, I can't say, I love it. It's a great, great album. It got me into Marty Stuart, and I can't say enough good things about it. It's their last album to date too. I mean, Marty doesn't have anything else out. He's working on something that he's releasing some singles on, but this is his most recent album with the Superlatives, Way Out West. So check it out if you like any of that stuff.
I might buy that without even hearing it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, I mean, it's one of those. It's a cinematic album for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Marty Stuart was a kind of a child prodigy.
Oh yeah.
Bluegrass world.
Yeah, he was.
And he played
as a mandolin player.
Lester Flatt took him under his wing, and he toured with the Lester Flatt Band. And I saw that band in 1980 at a bluegrass festival. And Marty Stuart, like they did nothing but let him shine, and he was a kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he was a phenomenal musician.
He is. He's incredible, and he gets better every year. He gets better.
Yeah, that album really excites me. That's pretty cool.
I think you'll love it, and it's top to bottom, and just a perfect album.
Wow. Yeah, with Mike Campbell involved and everything, I'm in. Okay, so my next album. How many we got left? I've got.
This should be your 4.
I've got 4 more to go.
Yep.
And 2 of them are from 2020, and 2 of them are from 2021.
Wow. keeping it relevant.
I'm so, I mean, Rough and Rowdy Ways,
I
2020.
can't say I've never heard of it. Who's that by?
uh, this is one of my favorite Bob Dylan albums of all time. Like, it's not just it's in my top 10 of Bob Dylan.
Wow.
It's not just a good album. It's a great album. Amazing that he came up with this, because really he was just doing the crooner stuff and doing his tours and hadn't released anything since, what was the last album he would have released?
2012 was Tempest, from his
Yeah,
last original album. Yeah.
yeah. And this comes out and just blew me away. I love it. I love every song on it. Amazing. Bob recreated himself again, and when you think you've dead and he's dead and buried, he comes back and surprises you with
At 79 years old when he did that.
yeah, amazing album. Rough and Rowdy Ways. Yeah, that's definitely my best album of 2020, and one of the best albums of the last 10 years. Absolutely. Rough and
Cool.
Rowdy Ways.
And again, I'll give a spoiler alert, because like I said, I was trying to avoid reading. I was reading Glenn's mind without speaking to him, and I was thinking I was gonna pick either Triplicate, because I love Triplicate by Dylan. That was his last Sinatra. I mean, that was his last crooner album. And then I also thought about doing Tempest, but I thought, yeah, Glenn. I mean, that's some. And
I considered.
It was expected. It was expected of me as the Dylan guy to choose Bob Dylan, but as a spoiler, none of my albums left are Bob Dylan albums. So, because I didn't want to be caught in the system. So,
That's funny, because I had both those albums, and I went, no, I don't want to make it Dylan centric. So
yeah,
so
that was me.
yeah. So
But we're a lot more than Bob Dylan, folks. We're a lot more than Bob Dylan. But
yeah.
anyway, so this is an artist. I don't know that you've ever heard of him, and I've never done a video specifically about him. This is a fella by the name of Pokey Lafarge.
Pokey Lafarge. Wow.
He's based out of St. Louis, is where he got his start. The name of the album, this is from 2017. It's called Manic Revelations. And if you listen, so he started with a group called the South City Three, where they did like ragtime era music. He was a big fan of, like, I mean, he had St. Louis running through his veins. So I mean, like, he was playing stuff with, like, like it was Pokey Lafarge and the South City Three. It was a quartet. They had like washboard, stand up bass. Very, like, his voice sounds like it was coming from an old like record speaker, like an old RCA, like horn. How his voice sounds. And so his early stuff, and I saw him back in 2014. Got to meet him just on a whim. Just caught him leaving. It was a festival, so I saw him walking around. And then I saw him again when this album came out in 2017. It might have been early 2018. So you talk about reinventing himself. So he went from doing this ragtime era 1920s 30s stuff, and he's one of these guys. He doesn't like to be called like retro. He says that his music is just American music, and he said it's just core American music. So this album, he essentially became like, he kind of moved the styles up to like the early 1960s, late 50s rockabilly. It's rockabilly, but it's still got like that St. Louis like harmonica, like Mark Twain sounding harmonica to it.
That's cool.
He just some good, like, some slap bass. It's got some good horns on it. The opening song called Riot in the Streets is very rockabilly with the horn section. He's a great performer, great lyricist. He's got a new album coming out, which I'm really excited about. The album that came out after this was also a contender. The last album that he did was very Randy Newman almost style string section stuff. I mean, he's constantly reinventing his own wheel, and I love it. I mean, he's doing his own thing. He's not stuck in one rut.
Wow.
So I mean, a lot of people don't know about Pokey Lafarge. He's another one of those. I saw him on Letterman. Check him out.
Yeah.
It's a great album, Manic Revelations by Pokey
You're knocking
Lafarge.
it in the park, buddy. I'm learning so much today. This is awesome.
Well, let me know after you hear his stuff whether you like it or not.
Yeah, we'll be talking for sure. Yeah, I'm gonna be listening to all this stuff.
I might be hurting your pocketbook too if you end up liking it.
Yeah. I hope
I
anybody
apologize.
watching's got a paper and pen handy too. There's lots of great suggestions here. Okay, like I'm getting into more stuff that we've been talking about, in our videos that I'm just falling in love with, and it's more recent records and stuff, but I just can't not talk about them because they are just have blown me away more than a lot of records. But I know we're both big fans of this, and I'm not sure if you picked it too, but the Dirty Knobs, Mike Campbell's project, after Tom Petty's sad passing. This is a fantastic record from start to finish. There's not a bad note on this record. It rocks. There's some bluesy stuff. There's some kind of, it's just, I don't know how to describe it. Some great acoustic.
Even some ballads, yeah, with the Irish Girl.
Yeah. It's an amazing album. 2 record set, The Dirty Knobs. I love that title of the band. Reckless Abandon, the album is called. Came out in 2020. If you like Tom Petty, his voice is very similar to Tom Petty's.
He's got that Gainesville drawl to his voice.
Yeah. So if you're a Tom Petty fan and you don't have this album, shame on you. You'll love it. I guarantee it. And even if you're a fan of blues and blues rock, just a must-have album.
And that's the album that actually got me into your channel, per our friend Matt Street. He recommended me because I did a review on it, one of my first couple of videos, and he said, "Hey, I know a guy named Glen Kellaway who just talked about this," and so that's what connected me with Glenn probably 6 months ago.
Cool. Oh, it's our record.
It's our record, yeah. It's a great album. I love it. Mike Campbell, brilliant.
Never get sick of it.
I will spoil it. I did not choose that album because I knew that you were going to pick it. Just as a guess. But this one, well, actually, no, I know you didn't pick this one, but I know that I'm pretty sure that you know this album and like this album. From 2018.
Okay, now the tables are turning because I didn't pick that album because I knew you would.
Did you see it?
No, yes, I've seen it.
Okay.
That album was on my list, and I went, no, Sam's definitely going to show that album. I'm not going to pick it.
So it's the final album. It's the 18th and final album by Mr. Prine, John Prine, The Tree of Forgiveness. You're talking about a resurgence. That album, if John Prine wasn't on the map, which he should have been in 2018, it put him back on the map again, like a second pin of John Prine. Got huge reviews, rave reviews. I mean, it was produced by Dave Cobb, I believe. It has some collaborations with Dan Auerbach from the Black Keys. Jason Isbell is on this album. It's like John Prine didn't have to put out an album this good in his early 70s, but he did. Essentially, they kind of told him, because he was a self-proclaimed procrastinator and somebody who didn't have to write all the time, like people like Neil Young or Bob Dylan. They were writing constantly. Van Morrison. They just essentially said, look, we're going to take all these, his wife and kids were like, here's a box of old scraps of songs. We're going to reserve a hotel for you in Nashville. Give him a couple of guitars. Essentially locked himself in his room and took his old scraps of songs and made this. And it was just a brilliant album. I mean,
it is a brilliant album.
Other than everybody's favorite John Prine album is either his debut or maybe Sweet Revenge.
Mm-hmm.
This might be my favorite John Prine album.
Oh, that's saying something. He's got some great
I mean, just some beautiful songs like I Have Met My Love Today and Summer's End, which Summer's End, what a beautiful John Prine song that is. And Boundless Love, just a beautiful tribute to Fiona, his wife. I saw John Prine on one of his last probably less than 10 shows, but maybe his last 8 or 9 shows. I saw John Prine in November of 19 before he passed away of COVID, and he did about half this album in the set list. And I mean, it fits right in with the rest of his stuff. I mean, it's funny, it's got charm, it's got things that can move you to tears. It's just a classic John Prine album from 2018.
Yeah.
And what a way for him to finish his career. I mean, he went out on top, no question.
Yeah.
And
well, it's kind of sad. It's one of the worst things that happened because of COVID was losing John Prine, as far as I'm concerned. John's like family is to me.
yeah, because he was getting excited for another album, because he released that song "I Remember Everything," which he had written for a follow up, which was just oh my word, what a closing song from John Prine.
But the fun
yeah, I mean,
is he like there's nothing like I know so many people who discovered John Prine because he died of COVID and this album, and listened to John for
wow,
the first time, hearing that album, the first time they've ever heard John Prine.
it's crazy.
I don't know if you follow the Canadian stud muffin, Larry Graves, who's like a legend in the vinyl community. He's got like 50,000 subscribers and been doing it for 20 years, and he did a video where he listened to that album and did a reaction video. He says, I keep hearing about John Prine, and so he played that album and then did a
Wow,
reaction video to it. It's the only time he'd ever heard John Prine. He was so touched by it, but it's
it's a perfect album. Another perfect album.
yeah. Yeah, amazing. Wow, that's an awesome pick. I knew you were going to do that. I knew it. Now we're almost even.
Almost, yeah.
You probably know I'm going to pick these two too. I bet you stayed away from them. They're albums that I recently purchased, but I just think they're amazing records, and I can't believe I'm not going to think they're amazing records 10 years from now.
I know what one of them is because he told me before we started filming, but
Yeah, I'm
the
going
other
to
one,
save that one for last.
okay.
But Steve Earle's JT album.
Okay.
Now, you had this album when it first came out, and we've talked about it a million times that I put it on my birthday list for my wife to get me, which my birthday was last week. So she's been sitting on this album for a couple of months at least. So I haven't been able to buy it or listen to it. So I've just been devouring it over, the past couple of weeks, and think it's one of Steve's best albums. Like I thought it would be the saddest record that I'd ever heard in my life, but it's not. It's actually very uplifting, and really turned me on to how great a songwriter Justin Townes Earle
Justin,
was.
what a tragic loss.
Tragic loss, and he wrote some wonderful songs. It's kind of made me go back and watch some YouTube stuff. I'm probably going to buy a couple of Justin Townes Earle records now. Yeah. But Steve does a great job on these songs, and the last song where I forget what it's called. It's
Last Words.
The last call or something. Last words.
Last Words.
Or that's really the song that kind of is a bit of a tearjerker.
His only original. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the emotional song, but the rest of the album is not a sad record at all. It's a beautiful tribute, and Steve did a great job on this album. Steve Earle is somebody who, in my opinion, keeps getting better with age.
Yep.
Amazing. From Guitar Town to now, I mean, the albums I think are just so much better. And all those great album covers. I love that theme, those album covers he's got going.
Was that the green vinyl copy?
This is black vinyl. And great label.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's got the bird on one side and JT on the other. But yeah, no, I didn't know this came in colored vinyl as well.
I saw one of the stores that I follow has a green vinyl, like a lime green.
Oh, that's right too. Actually, yeah, I think yeah, my buddy owns a record store. He told me about that actually. But yeah, I love this record. Great record.
Good pick.
Okay, I'm anxious to see what you're picking here.
All right, again, this isn't a number one. This is just the most recent album on my list from 2019. People that follow my videos know one of my probably one of my big three songwriters. I've got Bob Dylan. Uh, I would say Lennon, McCartney, and this guy might be up there in that top three. It varies. John Prine's up there too, but Van Morrison, uh, Three Chords in the Truth. That is my most recent. That's the end of my 10. I've mentioned that this is probably my favorite Van Morrison album of recent years. Definitely in the last 10 years, it's my favorite Van Morrison album. And he puts out sometimes 2 albums a year. I think he went through a phase. I think he did like 8 albums in 5 years at one point, from like Keep Me Singing up until like the present time.
Yeah.
His last album was very good, but this is, as far as like cohesive, solid. I mean, this has a good mix of like your Van Morrison uplifting, Celtic sounding songs, to your ballads, to your spiritual songs. I mean, it's got everything you want out of a Van Morrison album. The last song, Days Gone By, is essentially the tune of Auld Lang Syne with new Van Morrison lyrics. I mean, it's just, oh my goodness, it's such a good song. The first song, March Winds in February, is great. The second song, Fame Will Eat the Soul, is with Bill Medley from the Righteous Brothers, just talking about how fame can tear you down, essentially. And it's just a great duet between these two gruff sounding men. Van at the top of his game. It's got some very Astral Weeks sounding instrumentation, because the guitarist from Astral Weeks is still with Van Morrison. So a lot of that is interplayed throughout the album. Yeah, if you're going to listen to modern Van, in my opinion, start with some Three Chords in the Truth, because again, people were like, oh, Van Morrison, Brown Eyed Girl, Domino, those songs are so overdone. But Van Morrison, this is his 41st album. He just put out his 42nd, and he's due for his 43rd probably later this fall. I mean, the old guy, he's got chops. He's got so much left.
His voice is still fantastic.
And I was just listening. I was just listening to his Avalon Sunset album from the late 80s. I'm like, if you were to hear him do these songs now, like, you wouldn't know the difference between his voice. Like 30 years, it's the same voice.
Yeah, that's amazing. He has great control over his voice. He's a great singer. He just is. And a great writer, great songwriter. And he's been so prolific over the last few years. That album is a great album. I really like Roll with the Punches too, which is a real blues album with Jeff Beck. I think Jeff Beck kind of just makes that album really good.
Yeah. And, I also like I even liked his Versatile, his cover album, his like standards album, and You're Driving Me Crazy with Joey DeFrancesco.
I love that album. That's
great
a really
jazz album
too. Great jazz album.
He doesn't. I mean, even his worst stuff, you're going to find a couple of gems on his worst stuff, which he doesn't have a lot of that. He doesn't have a lot of bad stuff.
No, that's a great pick. Wow.
That's my 10.
That's your 10. One more to go, and we can both talk about this one, because I know we're both big fans of it. And I picked this as my album of the year of 2021 already. I can't believe there's going to be any album that's going to be even close to being as good as this. Dolenz does Nesmith, sings Nesmith. Mickey Dolenz. What a surprisingly amazing album this is. Produced by Mike Nesmith's son, Christian. It's kind of the cover. It's kind of a play on the Nielsen Does Newman album. And great cover. I absolutely love it. Great song selections, amazing. I mean, it's all Mike Nesmith songs, and they do such a great job. Christian Nesmith he should be producer of the year. If he arranged these songs, I don't know who arranged them, but if he did that too.
Yeah, him and Circa Link, his wife.
He is a freaking genius.
And it was all recorded during COVID.
Yeah, and Mickey sounds fantastic. The album sounds good. It's great sound quality. They didn't over compress it or do anything to it. The song arrangements are amazing. The song Circle Sky is just like phenomenal. You were saying earlier, because I know Matt Street mentioned it to, hey Matt, I know you're watching. We love you. Matt mentioned that Little Steven's Underground Garage. He called it the
Coolest song of the week.
coolest song of the week. Circle Sky. It's
Coolest song in the world, I should say. Coolest song in the world.
yeah, fantastic song. You guys got to hear that. And yeah, Tapioca Tundra, which is one of my favorite songs. Different Drum, which everybody knows from Linda Ronstadt. Uh, oh
Nine
man,
Times Blue with
yeah,
Little Red Rider.
yeah, just a great, great record.
And just a shout out to 7A Records. I mean, they always put out fantastic material with
They
packaging,
yeah,
booklets. You get the bang for the buck.
there's it's a blue vinyl.
Oh yeah,
Label. Yeah, beautiful sounding record too. It's just great. I can't get it off my turntable. It sold out. The first pressing sold out so fast, and I didn't order it right away, so I missed out. And then I could have ordered it from the U.S., but the price was like $50 some U.S. By the time I would have got it up here with the exchange rate and everything, it would have been $100 record.
yeah.
And, so I waited patiently, and then all of a sudden, Amazon showed a few in stock, and I jumped on it right away. And now, again, it's like when you try and order it, it's not available. It really is a great, great record. And
It's a great album. If you can get your hands on it, do it. I mean, the Monkees are really having a resurgence. I mean, ever really since Good Times. I mean, that album did huge. Their Christmas album did huge. Of course, 7A, they caught on. They released the Mike Nesmith Troubadour live album and some other stuff. I mean,
that was, you don't know how hard that was for me not to pick that one for this list.
and
too.
then the Mike and Mickey live album was good. Not 7A, but through Rhino. I mean, it's just everything that the Monkees are putting out of their modern sounds. I mean, it's all fantastic.
Yeah, wow, this is great. This has been so much fun.
This is a fun one.
I learned so much today. I picked up so much knowledge and so many suggestions for new stuff to listen to. That's perfect.
Likewise, yeah. And anybody that's watching, tell us if y'all know any of those albums, because some of them are pretty obscure on both sides.
Yeah, if you listen to any, give us some feedback on what you think. Yeah, we
Yeah.
hope we got onto something, but because we turned each other onto some stuff here for sure.
Quite a bit, yeah. We'll be emailing, I'm sure, this week.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for doing this, Sam.
Thanks for the invite. Yeah,
Hey,
for
man.
sure.
Peace out, everyone. We love you all, and we'll be back with another video in the next week or two.
Stay tuned.
Take care.